Okay, so we're going to talk about IV maintenance fluids. Every time I talk to medical students or off-service residents on the internal medicine service, or really anyone that wants to know anything about medicine, this topic comes up probably more frequently than any other topic. I think fluids are really confusing. I have PTSD when I flash back to med school and the awful lectures that were given by nephrology and pediatrics concerning IV maintenance fluids, and it just was really confusing. I don't think it's that confusing now that I'm in residency, and I hopefully will be able to show you how easily this can be done. So, first things first, there are a gajillion ways to actually accomplish how to do IV maintenance fluids. The first thing we need to talk about is that there is practical medicine in the real world, how we do things clinically, and then there is the fantasy boards land where you'll see on tests, step 1, step 2, step 3, your state medical boards, etc., etc. You're going to see different ways to calculate IV maintenance fluids. So the most commonly tested way that you'll see on boards, and you usually see this in a pediatric setting, but you can do it in an adult setting as well, is called the 4-2-1 rule. You probably have seen this before. It's probably gonna jostle some cobwebs up there. Oh yeah, I remember when I was sleeping in class that day, I heard someone say about the 4-2-1 rule. So what this says, and I'm gonna go through this very quickly because this is more board relevant, and again, these videos are more clinically relevant. But just to be complete, here is the 4-2-1 rule. It says for the first 10 kilograms of anyone's body weight, they should get 4 mils per hour. For their second kilograms of body weight, they should get 2 mils per hour. Every kilogram over 20 kilograms, because remember, we're at 10, another 10, 10 and 10 is 20. So at 21 kilograms and up, you get 1 mil per hour of IV maintenance fluids. So for example, if we have a male down here who is 85 kilograms, for his first 10 kilograms of body weight, he's going to get 4 mils per hour per kilogram, which will give him 40 mils for his first 10 kilograms. For his second 10 kilograms of body weight, he's going to get 2 mils per hour, so that's going to max out at 20. And then here's the extra. So we've addressed his first 20 kilograms of body weight, so what's left is 65 kilograms of body weight. And what you have here would be 65 kilograms times 1 mil per hour per kg would give you an extra 65. You do the math here of, and that's a mirror image, of 40 plus 20 plus 65. You're going to see that that's 125 mils for an average 85 kilogram male. That's it. Could have been female as well. Not trying to just do IV maintenance fluids on guys. So that is what you'll see. Okay. Again, this is more board relevant. I have found that in the real world, that's not how that's done. I have seen that done at some hospitals. Some people still do it. If you Google this and you up-to-date this, you're going to find a million ways that you can do IV maintenance fluids. So that's one way. I feel like that's the most commonly tested way that you'll see on boards. So let's talk about reality, what we actually see here. So the way we do it at my hospital and what I've seen done at larger academic centers is that you categorize people into one of 4 categories and you just put them on that IV maintenance fluid. I feel like it's a bit more confusing at the beginning than what I just went over for the 4-2-1 rule, but it takes a lot of the nitty-gritty math out of it so that when you see a person, you know that they belong in one of these 4 categories. That's it, end of story. And clinically, again, I think this is much easier once you get the knack of it as opposed to having to calculate out that 4-2-1 rule every single time. And then additionally too, for what it's worth, I know it's an anecdote and I like evidence-based stuff, but clinically I've seen this fit into 4 categories system work very, very well. And again, I've seen it done at large academic centers, so this is not just in the boot heels of Ohio, this is how we do fluids. No, this is a very generally accepted concept that you can do. So let's start out with the numbers that you need to know, and here is the nitty-gritty. Here are our 4 categories. On the left-hand side, you're going to see here 0 IV maintenance fluids per hour, okay, which would give you 0 liters a day. Woo, tough math. The second category is going to be 42 mils per hour. If you get 42 mils per hour, that gives you a liter per day. And moving on to the third column, our man in yellow, this is your gold standard fluid. This is 83 mils per hour of IV maintenance fluids, or 2 liters per day. The average human being, male or female, needs 83 mils per day of IV maintenance fluids. Again, that's 83 mils per hour, which will give you 2 liters daily. And then lastly, on the right-hand side there, you'll see 125 mils per hour of IV maintenance fluids, which is 3 liters per day. So these are the 4 categories. These are really the numbers that you need to know. We're going to take it a little bit further here in a second, but all in all, this is what you need to know when you're calculating out IV maintenance fluids. If you can memorize these numbers, I swear the rest comes easy. So now let's fold this down, dun dun dun, to see who gets what. So let's look at the 0 IV maintenance fluids per hour, or 0 liters per day. These people are generally healthy. This is your Jane or Joe Schmo on the floor who doesn't need to have an IV, who's here for, let's go ahead and say, gout or a stub toe. And they're eating, they're drinking, they're peeing, they're pooping. They don't need IV maintenance fluids. Not everyone does. I feel like that's an old wives' tale, that everyone needs to be on IV maintenance fluids. They don't. Looking over here to the next column, 42 mils per hour, so a liter per day. Who gets a liter per day of IV maintenance fluids? You see here I say, I can zoom in a little bit, quote, just a little, or fluid caution. So if you have someone that has chronic kidney disease or heart failure and you're worried about fluid overloading them, because remember, our gold standard is 83 mils per hour, which is 2 liters per day, and these people are getting 1 liter per day. Again, congestive heart failure. If they have a lot of ascites and they have hepatic failure, you don't want them to get right-sided heart failure because you're fluid overloading them from that aspect. That would be appropriate as well. The other patient population that you can do this in is, let's say someone comes in, they look generally healthy, let's say they have pancreatitis. Let's say they have chronic pancreatitis, and they're vomiting a lot initially, but they come in, things have calmed down, their symptoms have mainly gone away, but you know that they're prone to get sick, they're prone to throw up. You may want to put on a liter in the background just for good measure. Or maybe you think their appetite and their ability to drink fluids is not going to be that great because they're not feeling well, but they're not dehydrated, but you just think you might not be drinking as much as you should in the hospital. You can just put on an extra liter in the background. That's okay. So now let's talk about 83 mils per hour. These are our gold standard people. If you have a healthy person in the hospital on the floor, you're going to put them on 83 mils per hour of IV maintenance fluids, i.e. 2 liters a day, if they're NPO for any reason. Most people get put on 83 mils per hour because they're NPO for a contrast study that they have to have, or a surgery they have to have in the morning. On medicine, a lot of times we'll be consulted to medically manage people. This is the IV maintenance standard that we do, 83 mils per hour. They need their 2 liters per day, period. If they are getting it PO, then they need an IV. And then lastly, 125 mils per hour of IV maintenance fluids, which is 3 liters per day. These are people that are dehydrated. These are your sick people. If you need more than usual because you're going to be vomiting that up throughout the day, and you were initially hypotensive and you needed pressors and you needed bolus after bolus of albumin and bolus of IV normal saline, these are the people that are dehydrated and fluid down, that you need to put on 125. And then as they get better, transition them to the 83. Okay, but maybe initially you need to put them on 125. So to recap, healthy person, doesn't need anything. 1 liter per day may be someone that you think might throw up once or twice in the hospital and you just want a little bit extra on, or maybe they have heart failure or they have some sort of chronic disease like hepatic failure, cirrhosis, or chronic kidney disease, and you don't want to fluid overload them because you don't think that their organs can handle it. Then maybe these people should be on 1 liter per day. 83 mils per hour, again, gold standard. Most people need to be on that are NPO, they're healthy. And then 125, again, people that are dehydrated. I do have a quick commercial break here for dialysis patients. My words of advice to you would be, don't put anyone on IV maintenance fluids that's on dialysis until you talk to someone that's higher up than you. Typically a nephrologist or the attending. because these people, generally speaking, are a closed fluid system. They don't pee, fun fact, most of them. At least they all get to that point eventually, okay? So this is where you need to talk to them because it's a closed fluid system. Usually we'll put these people on 1 liter per day. They'll fall in the 42 mils per hour column, but I put dialysis under 0 because talk to someone first that knows more about chronic kidney disease than you do. Even I will do this, okay? So these are the numbers you really need to know. Now, finishing up here, let's talk about scary physiology. I know I said in my intro that I typically wouldn't talk about physiology much, but here it is important. So, things to note about physiology, and I will wrap this up quickly here because I'm not going to bore you with this. But there are some electrolyte basics you need to know to correctly manage someone with IV maintenance fluids in the hospital. Number one is that you need to know the electrolyte normals of sodium, potassium, chloride, and glucose, because those are your 4 main players that you're going to be messing with. I feel like Marco Rubio right now. I need to take a drink. So those are the normal values that you need to have memorized. And you can see our little fish skeleton here. You've seen this in the hospital. So here's how I like to remember the normals to keep it simple in my brain. Sodium is 135 to 145, period. Potassium, 3.5 to 4.5, period. You notice the 3-5-4-5 correlation between your Na and your K there? Keeps it easy in your brain. Not going to forget it, right? Good. Chloride, 96 to 106. The sixes are kind of alliteration in my head. CO2 you don't need to know with respect to IV maintenance fluids. BUN and creatinine you don't need to know really with respect to putting them in IV maintenance fluids for this measure. Now, if they're on dialysis, then yes, look at that. And then finally, glucose, 75 to 100 is normal. So here's what we're building up to in the next 3 minutes. I'm going to have this done in under 15 minutes. We're building up to that the average IV maintenance fluid in the hospital is D5 half normal saline with 20 milliequivalents of potassium chloride at 83 mils per hour. You already know why it's 83 mils per hour, right? Because from our other sheet, most people get 83 mils per hour because they're NPO, they need to have surgery, they can't drink things orally. So we're building to this, and let's see how we get there, because most people get put on this concoction in the hospital, okay? So the first thing to talk about is salt. You can see here. Here are the different values. Normal saline, half normal saline, lactated ringers. Normal saline is kind of a misnomer, okay? Because if it's normal saline, shouldn't it be between our normal physiologic sodium, 135 to 145? It's not. The sodium concentration in normal saline maintenance IV fluid is 154, which is higher than what we have in our body. So if you put someone on this, their sodium's going to go up and tick up over the next couple of days. So we don't want that to happen. The body can deal with half normal saline and can just concentrate it as needed, okay? So half normal saline only has 77 milliequivalents of sodium. It's not going to make your sodium go down. It should keep it right where it's at, okay? Because the body, again, can concentrate it with, can just concentrate it by letting more free water go. So this is how we usually do it. Most people get half normal saline. Now, if someone comes in and they're hyponatremic and they're 130s or they're 128, they need to have normal saline because that's hypertonic saline relative to the body, right? And that's going to make the sodium go up over time, a day or two. But most people, if their sodium is normal and they need IV maintenance fluids, put them on half normal, please, because if you put them on normal, it's going to go up because it's really hypertonic. It's not really normal. Okay, and then when you look down at the chloride, look at normal saline. It's 150 milliequivalents of sodium chloride, so you also have the same for chloride. Notice that 154 with respect to sodium is a little bit higher than normal, but not that much higher. If you look at the chloride, 154 here, that is significantly higher than our normal 96 to 106. This is going to come into play when we get into the old controversy of normal saline versus lactated ringers. What do? It's the old Coke and Pepsi debate that goes back and forth. You can see here on half normal saline, the chloride is a little bit better, right? So it's within the normal range under half normal saline there, 97 milliequivalents of chloride. So that's normal, okay? And now lactated ringers here. This is really close to normal. They will call lactated ringers, quote, a balanced electrolyte physiologic maintenance fluid, because you can see here 130 milliequivalents under lactated ringers over on the right here. 130 milliequivalents of sodium, 109 milliequivalents of chloride. That's really close to our normal body, okay? So why not use lactated ringers instead of normal saline for IV maintenance fluids if it's so much better? Well, some people do. A lot of hospitals do. But the shift in trends goes back and forth every couple of years. This is the age-old debate between normal saline and lactated ringers. Which one is better? In theory, lactated ringers should be, right? Because it's closer to your normal physiologic balance. The thing is that when you run the studies, you don't really see that much of a difference in outcome. In fact, I should say you don't see a difference in outcome at all. And the reason why they like to stick with normal saline is because of the money. Normal saline is way cheaper than lactated ringers. So a lot of hospitals will stick to it because the data essentially shows that the outcomes are identical between normal saline and lactated ringers. Now, if you're really into reading academic articles and you've seen the big controversy between the two, you're probably having an aneurysm right now because you disagree with me. I would put to you that the evidence is extremely weak that lactated ringers is better than normal saline. There have been a few studies out of Australia that have demonstrated that LR is superior to normal saline. I'm not really sold on it. Now, I agree that in theory it should be better, so why not just err on the side of caution? That's fine by me. I'm not opposed to lactated ringers for normal saline. With the exception of one case, because in all studies they have showed lactated ringers to be non-inferior to normal saline, except in one patient population, and even these results are mixed at best. And this would be someone with an acute kidney injury or someone with renal failure, chronic or acute. In these people, I reach for lactated ringers over normal saline for their IV maintenance fluids, period, and for boluses. But boluses are another topic. So unless they have an acute kidney injury or unless they have chronic kidney disease, I'm going with normal saline. Now, can you go with normal saline with acute kidney injury or chronic kidney disease? Yes, absolutely. I do it all the time. My bosses get mad at me if I use LR just because it costs more money. You'll see surgery tends to favor LR more than normal saline. Again, surgery tends to err on the side of lactated ringers versus medicine tends to err on the side of normal saline. Again, it really is a Coke and Pepsi argument, and you can formulate your own argument by going to read the literature that's out there. Now, I will state, again, in theory, lactated ringers should be better, but in practice, it's not. The data just it's extremely weak, and it doesn't really hold up to scrutiny. The sample sizes are really tiny, and UpToDate just released a giant meta-analysis review a couple months back about normal saline versus LR, and their conclusion on UpToDate, which is, right, that's kind of the doctor's Wikipedia that we all use. It said that there was no difference between outcomes. So even with the acute kidney injury and chronic kidney disease patients, there was no outcome difference. So now that I've bored you with that tangent, let's go down to potassium here. Okay, so the human body, as you can see here, needs 40 to 100 milliequivalents of potassium per day for normal human physiologic function. You usually get this through your diet. Now, if you're NPO, you ain't getting this, right? So what we can do is that since most people are getting 2 liters per day at the 83 mils per hour, we can just add on 20 milliequivalents of potassium chloride to their IV maintenance fluid bag so that if there's 20 milliequivalents in each bag, then you're going to get 40 milliequivalents per day because most people, again, right, are going to be on 83 mils per hour, which is 2 liters per day. Is this making sense yet? Hopefully. Okay? You can always err on the side of giving more if you need to. Most people in the ICU are getting daily labs. If you're out on the floor, maybe not daily, maybe every couple of days. If your potassium drops, you can supplement. I'm not going to go into how to calculate that, but you can always add more. You don't want to make people hyperkalemic. That can lead to heart arrhythmias. That can lead to bad things. Okay, so we err on the side of shooting for the low end of normal human physiologic function to say let's give them at least of their 40 milliequivalents per day. Now, if they're hyperkalemic, don't give them any extra K chloride in their IV maintenance fluids. Okay, so we've covered salts. We've i.e. sodium chloride. We've covered potassium. Now let's talk about glucose, D5. So 5% of your IV maintenance fluids, generally speaking, should be glucose. Why? So here's the thing about IV maintenance fluid patients. A lot of them are NPO, or a lot of them aren't eating because they're sicker than a dog, right? Sorry, I'm just talking to my dog across the room. Not you. You're healthy. So glucose, what do you need here? If you are on D5 with 2 liters per day of maintenance fluids, you will get approximately 340 calories per day if you're getting, again, the standard 2 liters. Why does the 340 calories matter? Well, that prevents catabolism, okay? If you don't do that, the body tends to start breaking itself down because it goes into starvation mode. Now, you can get by with your D5 at 2 liters a day for a couple of days. 3-4 days with D5, you're going to prevent the body from going into full-fledged starvation mode. Eventually, you're going to have to supplement with something else, like TPN or tube feeds, or find other ways to give them nutrition. But in the meantime, if they're NPO or they're not eating for a couple days, that D5 will give them 340 calories per day if they're getting 2 liters. You can half that if they're just getting 1 liter per day. But generally speaking, getting those 340 calories a day will prevent catabolism. It will prevent body breakdown. Okay, so you would not put on D5 if they were hyperglycemic. So if you have these uncontrolled diabetics that are in there now, with the exception of DKA, but if you're hyperglycemic and it's not from being in DKA, you can hold the D5 in the maintenance fluid and just watch them daily. Again, the daily labs, especially in the ICU setting, is very helpful because you're assessing their sodium, their potassium, their glucose, their chloride, and you can adjust accordingly. Okay, so let's recap here. Most people are getting 83 mils per hour of IV maintenance fluids because they need the 2 liters a day, because that's what most people need. Okay, and so that's our 83 mils per hour. Why are we doing the D5? Well, because we need to prevent catabolism from happening. We need to prevent the body from breaking itself down. You need some nutrition, right? There we go. That's a little bit better for you guys on YouTube. So again, you need the D5 way over here. Okay, so that's where the D5 comes from. The half normal saline. Why do we do that? Why not do normal saline? Again, normal saline is hypertonic with respect to the normal human physiologic sodium. You want to shoot for 135 to 145, and the way you get that usually is by doing half normal saline. That'll keep sodium regular. If your sodium is too high, putting them on a half normal saline can even bring them down a little bit, okay? Or if their sodium's low is when you would put someone on normal saline, not half normal. Assess them daily. When they get to the normal range, then put them on half normal. That'll keep them where they're at, okay? And then finally, looking at potassium. You need 40 to 100 milliequivalents a day. You just get in your diet. You add on 20 milliequivalents per bag, and you get your minimum of your 40. So this is where a D5 half normal saline with 20 milliequivalents of potassium chloride at 83 mils per hour comes from. So I think that's a good topic to start with. You may need to go back, pause, rewind, see it again, but this is how it's done clinically. Again, on boards, 4-2-1. Okay, this keeps it simple in boards land, but in reality, you need to make sure that your patients fall into one of these 4 categories, and you need to have reason why. And these categories change every day for how much fluid they need, and eventually you want them to get off IV fluids so they can go home. If they're eating, peeing, pooping, and drinking and eating on their own, they can go home, generally speaking. That's a really good rule of thumb to kind of tuck away as far as when people can leave the hospital. Take this with you. This will be very helpful as you round, okay? And then we also cover the controversy between normal saline and lactated ringers. Make up your own minds. I tend to err on the side of normal saline. That's where I think the data leads. If you really want to be nerdy about it and go look at the literature, you can. So that's all for IV maintenance fluids. I hope you enjoyed it. Look out for some more topics. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you.